Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. For many of us, restaurant work is a temporary gig. We wait tables to make money in college or pick up shifts as a bartender between periods of more permanent employment. But to some restaurant veterans, service industry jobs like waiting tables or tending bar aren't just a way station. They're a profession, and they bring all the opportunities for accomplishment and financial benefits of jobs that we may think of as more prestigious. These jobs are the subject of a story published by our friends at Sauce Magazine earlier this month. It's called At Your Service. And joining me in studio to talk about it is Matt Sorrell, a staff writer at Sauce Magazine. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We're also joined by Peggy Connolly, a longtime bartender and server at Sidney Street Cafe. Peggy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And finally, we're joined by Lisa Haddon, a server at Trattoria Marcella. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you.
Have you been a restaurant server? What did you find most challenging? Give us a call at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. Or you can send us a tweet at STL On Air or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. So Matt Sorrell, first up, what was the impetus for this feature story in this month's Sauce?
Well, we've been talking about doing this story for a long time and just trying to figure out really how to do it and what the angle is going to be, because we do cover the restaurant industry, obviously. But the people who get all the accolades are usually the cooks, the chefs, the mixologists, right? But the folks who serve and bartend don't really get as much attention. And there are many of them that, like you said, there's an idea that somehow these aren't careers; they're just like a way, stepping stone to something else. And which is absolutely true for some people, but you can have a great career doing this, and it's really a great path.
And a true pro can make such a difference in terms of how much fun a night out is,
Absolutely.
or just how pleasant it ends up being.
I tell people all the time, it's very rare that I will 10 years down the line say, I remember exactly the dish I had or the drink I had. I can always tell you where I had a good time.
Yeah.
And that's all about the servers and bartenders.
That's a good point. Your writer looked at 4 restaurant professionals. We've got 2 of them here. We'll talk about the other 2 in a minute. But the common thread is that everyone is doing pretty well financially. I noticed that I think literally every person you talk to in the story, they own their own home. And, some of them talked about being able to put their kids through college. Were you surprised at the salary ranges that people were talking about?
Not really, because I think that, the folks we talk to work at places that are very well respected, that have a great clientele and who have a clientele who understand what they do and appreciate it for the most part. So it's not like, someone who's just, I'm working a couple days a week and it's maybe a fast food place or, like someplace like that where
these are pros.
Yeah, these are people who actually do this for a living and know what they're doing.
So speaking of people like that, Lisa Haddon, you're one of those. You're a server at Trattoria Marcella. How long have you been a restaurant server?
Wow.
Not to start with a hardball question.
Right. Well over 30 years.
Okay. So you've been doing this a long time.
Yes. I started as a hostess with the Pasta House Company when I was 15. Probably too young to be working, but I was working. And I moved on from there. I've always enjoyed the work. I love people. And, there's a certain population that isn't cut out for 9-to-5 work, office work, or otherwise.
Right.
Most of the people that I have met in my serving career are extremely creative, readers, painters. They're very bright. And this provides great income for them while still allowing them to be themselves.
I really enjoyed the profile of you in the Sauce story because it detailed a nightmare that you had. And frankly, it took me back to my days as a restaurant server. I think I was one of those people who wasn't cut out for it, and I would routinely have nightmares. Can you tell us about this dream that you had?
Yes. Well, I have it a lot. Well, not a lot, but, it's a recurring dream, and it's almost always the same. For some reason, my station's outside. I don't know why. Maybe that's why I don't like working the patio to this day.
Yeah.
But
your subconscious is telling you.
Yes, it's not for me. And my station is at least the size of Six Flags parking lot.
That's a nightmare right there.
Tables as far as you can see. I'm the only server there. And while I'm taking the order, I know in the back of my mind, I'm never getting back here. They're going to be gone when I get back here. And it never occurs to me in the dream, just leave, just quit. Just get out of here.
You have to serve those
I have
tables.
to serve them. I have to stick it out. And then I'll wake up and my heart is pounding.
We're going to have a phone we're going to have to turn off here. For those of you listening at home, that is not your phone. I think one of our experienced restaurant professionals may not be such a professional of radio and didn't realize that we have to have those turned off. So we'll deal with that here. Peggy Connolly, hey, no problem at all. It happens to all of us. But Peggy Connolly, so you started serving in 1979. Do you ever find yourself having that dream that Lisa Haddon has?
Yes, I used to be on the Robert E. Lee, and someone had pulled the plug on the Mississippi River, and the boat was swirling around, and we were trying to get to our tables and hold on, and it always happened. Same dream.
That's interesting that this is this ongoing sort of terror. Yeah. Peggy, when did you start at Sidney Street?
I started Sidney Street in 1991, so 28 years ago.
And what do you like about working there? I mean, you have to like working there to
I
be
like
there.
the people, the experience. You know, of course, I go from 3 to 11, so I get the daytime to myself to do my things. But basically the people, you know, everybody will walk in, like 75% of my clientele is customers. They're repeat customers. So just to find out what's going on, you know, and all their experiences is pretty cool.
Do you also have regulars, Lisa?
Sure, I have a few. Now, I work with some people who have been there at Trattoria 20 years, 15 years, and more.
Wow.
So we have a good amount of regulars, for sure.
Yeah. Now, Peggy, one of the things I thought was particularly interesting in the profile of you is you talked a bit about the impact that this job has had on your body. Obviously,
Correct.
You like this job. There's a lot of good points. But,
Right.
But what's the downside here in terms of what this
it's
has
physically
done?
hard. I used to, for the last 10 years, I've had an assistant, Spencer, but before then I did it by myself.
So you were serving all those tables in the bar area.
Yeah, you'll have 150 people in the dining room you're still serving, plus you have, 13 tables and whatever going on, and shaking martinis over your head is really a no. It blows your rotator cuffs, it's just certain experiences.
Yeah. And how's it on your feet? I feel like that was what used to ache for me when I was serving. I see you, Lisa.
Shoes are key.
Yep.
The right shoes are key because I've had many a nights where I just limp from my car to my front door. Yeah, it's very painful sometimes. I've had some knee problems. So really, your best friend is a good pair of shoes.
Do you wear high heels?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that is a
I
very
have
emphatic
heels
no.
on today, but it's rare because I don't
Yeah.
wear them anymore. Those days are
that's
over.
one of my things. If I'm at a restaurant and I, as someone who works in a restaurant, I totally agree that shoes are key. Whenever I see somebody wearing heels or wearing, something fashionable, I just shake my head. That you're obviously not doing this for a long time.
Peggy Conley, do you wear heels on the job?
I don't, but on the Robert E. Lee, we were required to wear 1.5-inch heels.
This was one of your first restaurant jobs.
Right, so for 14 years, I wore 1.5-inch heels waiting on tables.
And what does that do to your feet to do that for 14 years?
They kill you from then on.
Yeah, that's hard. I think the stereotype is that women in the restaurant industry have to wear the higher heels or have to wear the sexy outfits to get tips. Have either of you experienced that, Peggy?
Well, I'm in a bow tie and a collar buttoned up, so that's not always the case.
Yeah, and that's great that you can be there as a professional and be respected with that bow tie.
I think there are venues that's popular, but I think where we work, is much more professional than that. And really your service and your professionalism is what's at stake here. Or not at stake, but
That's what wins out.
Right.
Matt Sorrell, your writer talked to two professionals at Tony's in addition to Lisa and Peggy. Can you tell us a little bit about their stories?
Yeah, Ken and Donnie are the two folks that are over there, and they've done, between the two of them, like 60-something years, I think, at Tony's.
Wow.
They both worked there under Mr. Bomarito, who recently passed away. Yeah. Again, they had really similar experiences to Lisa and Peggy in that, they were able to work at a place that is, very well regarded. And I don't know about you guys, but I know that Ken and Donnie had mentioned that, Mr. Bomarito and other people in the organization were really great mentors to them too, and actually, gave them a lot of great life lessons while they were working there. So, but they, between those two guys, they actually, everything from I think host to bartender to, to floor captain.
And
everything
that's
in
one
between.
of the very nicest restaurants in town. Do you think there's
Absolutely.
something about these places like Sidney Street, like Tony's, where they're able to retain their serve staff longer because these are such well-run places?
I think so. I mean, I would assume, like, I've always not worked quite as high level as those places, but
In
you know,
addition to being at Sauce Magazine, you yourself have been a bartender.
right, exactly, and at fantastic places. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I think so. I think people take it seriously when they go to a Tony's or a Trattoria Marsala or a Sidney Street. You know, it's a serious experience, and they know what it's worth.
Peggy Conley, for you at Sidney Street, which is now a James Beard Award-winning restaurant, is it hard for people to get in there? They have to have experience at other restaurants first, or do people still
Yeah,
are
you
able
have
to
to
come
have
in?
pretty much experience to come through the door.
They're not hiring a waiter
No.
right off the street. Okay. So that probably makes a difference. What about at a place like Trattoria Marsala, a respected restaurant, but also a family place? And
Same. I will say, I wanted to work at Trattoria Marcella for a very long time, and there was no turnover. There were no slots. There was nothing available. So when a space became available, I jumped at it.
And what about that particular workplace was appealing to you?
Well, having such a great reputation for 24 years, first of all, that's an accomplishment in itself. So that's number one. I had been a diner there several times, so that was number two. I could see what was going on, not only on my plate, but, you know, just around me and the people that were serving me. So, you know, those two things were just kind of perfect setup for me.
And Lisa, you had previously did a stint as a co-manager at Stellina Pasta Cafe, which is another really well-loved Italian restaurant until it closed. But after it closed, were you tempted to try to stay on the management side and apply for management jobs as opposed to going back to being a server?
No,
Why not?
because I needed more money than that.
So the servers make more money than
Most
managers?
definitely, yes.
That's an interesting little
Generally
secret
speaking,
there.
that's what, you know, a lot of times, you know, people make the mistake of they have a great server, a great bartender, and they're like, oh, well, we're going to pluck you for a management position. Well, what makes them great as a server or a bartender doesn't necessarily translate to being a great manager. I mean, and also there is the money issue too, because management is usually salaried, which means your hours are not always your own, and you have a little bit more flexibility for sure on the floor.
And that was it for me, too, because I have a son, and my schedule works out perfectly. You know, when I don't have my son, those are the nights I work. And to be a manager, you're there so many more hours than you are as a server. So not just the money, but the time didn't work out.
Peggy, have you ever been tempted to go to the management side?
Never.
Never. Never even crossed your mind.
No.
That's funny. Now, for the two women here, Lisa Haddon and Peggy Connolly, you guys, I'm sure, have worked with many other servers over the years, both good and bad. What do you think the secret is to being a good server?
Well, I think you have to know what you're serving. You know, your food is important. You have to be able to bring it across like it's something they want to, oh, I want to try that one. Or, you know, they'll say, well, will you just pick what we're going to have, you know? So I think knowing your food, knowing the experience.
Knowing the food, that's interesting. I wouldn't have expected that. Matt, are you surprised that that's her answer?
No, I mean, honestly, I think that's the key is you have to be able to go to your table or your seat, whoever you're serving, and say, here's what we've got here, and kind of get an idea of what they want, and then go from there. I mean, it's because you only have a limited amount of time. You don't really have time to camp out there. So you had to get your point across.
Lisa, what do you think?
You know, not to make it sound too simple, but I think you have to care. I think you really have to care about the person that you're serving. You know, you really have to be concerned about their experience. This is your life. This is your job. This is your salary, basically. So for you to just take it casually and not care again and again and again, you're not going to make it.
Yet at the same time, I know the adage is that the customer is always right, but I feel like increasingly in our world, we hear about stories about these, not to put too fine a point on it, customers from hell. Have either of you experienced somebody who just couldn't be dealt with no matter what?
No, I usually don't have that with our clientele, but
People at Sidney
I've
Street
heard
are
of
a
them.
higher class of
Yeah.
person, yeah. Lisa, in all your many restaurant jobs, have you ever had somebody where you felt like they just couldn't be satisfied?
No,
Wow.
no.
Maybe
There's
this
always
is-
a way.
Maybe the secret is that you guys are really, really good at your jobs. You know how to break through.
It's a challenge. You know, you have people come in, they might be soaked with rain, they're starving, they had a terrible day, they had to wait for their table, let's say, and, you know, they're prickly, they're not happy. It's a challenge to me to get them settled down and happy by the time they leave.
And do you sort of enjoy having that challenge? Or?
Sometimes.
That's
yeah.
interesting. Matt, in your time as being a bartender, have you sort of taken the same accomplishment from being able to turn around somebody's bad mood?
Well, I like to think so. I've had a couple that, there was no satisfying them, so I just bought them their drink and said, thank you very much. I mean,
that could go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just the attitude, and it is hard sometimes when you're being confronted with someone who is obviously not happy. Your first reaction is to get defensive. My first reaction is to get defensive and be like, well, just, and you just have to put that ego aside and just say, maybe I just can't accommodate you today, and I'm really sorry. Please come back. We'll try again sometime.
Yeah. Matt Sorrell of Sauce Magazine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you.
Sauce Magazine's story is in its September issue for those of you who are interested in reading it. And I also want to say Peggy Conley of Sidney Street Cafe, thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And Lisa Haddon of Trattoria Marcella, thank you for joining us today.
Of course, thank you.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio 90.7 KWMU. Thank you for listening. I'm Sarah Fenske.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com. The Gateway brings you the day's news from the St. Louis region and across Missouri. It also includes stories from the Illinois side of the river and our Metro East reporter, Will Bauer.
In Alton, in Belleville, in East St. Louis, in Edwardsville, in Cahokia Heights, at Scott Air Force Base, I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
Listen to reports from Will and all of our journalists weekdays on the Gateway, on the STLPR app, and wherever you get podcasts.